This is Comic Shenanigans, episode 1098, Book of the Month Club, Superman, Batman, Public Enemies.
Ain't no stopping them shenanigans. Love getting into shenanigans. All up in them shenanigans. 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 Shenanigans.
Welcome to the Comic Shenanigans podcast. This is episode 1098. It's our Book of the Month Club. This time talking about Superman, Batman, Public Enemies, otherwise known as Superman, Batman 1-6. And this would have been from the Superman, Batman series from 2003. I'm your host, Adam Chapman, joined by only one co-host today for Book of the Month Club, Paul Skorez. Paul, how are you today?
I am fantastic. How are you, Mr. Chapman?
I am very good. We were chatting off pod, and then we realized we shouldn't be doing that. We should just be talking on pod. So to go back for a second, part of the reason why we're talking about a Superman book as opposed to eventually getting back to the Clone Saga is because I keep coming up with themes. This time we have a Superman movie just about to come out, so it felt like a good time to talk about the Superman book. So Nate and I had gone back and forth on a good book that we thought you would like. Not realizing you'd read this before. This definitely aided our decision. Although in some ways we would have liked it to have been something that was totally new to you. So this is Superman Batman. It's from 2003. You got Ed McGuinness and Jeph Loeb. Definitely at the height of their powers in a lot of ways. So I'm very curious, when did you first read this story?
I'm pretty sure I read it upon release. Or around very, very close to when it came out. Because this was probably in the zone of my peak era of reading anything DC, because I'm pretty sure around this time we're talking Jeph Johns Green Lantern, Jeph Johns Teen Titans is very close to around here. We're about to hit into Identity Crisis, Infinite Crisis. Mm-hmm. We're in that kind of zone right there, because that's Identity Crisis was kind of like I grabbed it like off the shelf. Mm-hmm. And from there onwards, I weaved through various projects. Hush, all that was in that kind of sweet spot. Mm-hmm. So when I gave DC kind of their real kick of the can to suck me in,
did it work?
They had me for a little bit. Yeah, they had me until the final crisis. That's when I walked away, right? Good old Grant Morrison loves to ruin all my comic book experiences. But ultimately, yeah, I remember, because I didn't buy it personally, but my friend Walter, he was the DC guy. He loved Batman. I read, he collected No Man's Land, so I read that when he bought the issues and stuff at the time. So yeah, he picked these up. I remember, I don't think I connected the dots at the time, but I remember, enjoying McGuinness's work on Deadpool. And then seeing this art here, this is like somewhat familiar or something. So I picked this up and read it, and it's I do enjoy McGuinness's art overall. I know he's got these big chunky monkeys, very animated, it's very stylistic. Maybe you love it or hate it in certain things, but I've always enjoyed McGuinness. The only thing that bothered me about McGuinness's Superman is, and it hit me right in the face when I saw the action figures they made based on these books, was Superman's cape is way too short. It barely touches his butt. So it seems super, super short all the time, and that, for whatever reason, didn't jive. Like, Batman's cape's always massive and flowing, because that's Batman, but his cape just felt like, his cape doesn't maybe as voluminous as intense as Batman's, but it should just go down to behind his knees or something, right? Because it felt way too short for what it was from a character design standpoint. But yeah, fun little read here.
It's interesting.
Sure. Very colorful, very bombastic.
Like, I know that when we picked it, we definitely wanted something that felt a little breezy, because we wanted something that wouldn't be as labor-intensive on you as Thunderbolts had been, which, which again goes to, it's interesting, this is 2003, Thunderbolts is 96, 97, and it's interesting how tonally a shift there is in writing for comics. Jeph Loeb is adapting probably better than some, and he really perfected kind of breezy, kind of very light on plot storytelling. Like, I love Hush, but is it the plot of Hush or is it the art of Hush, and being able to see Jim Lee do, basically a world tour of Batman villains and just kind of throw everyone into a big smorgasbord adventure. The plot itself is relatively simplistic and not that compelling per se, but you're there for the art. So, and Jeph Loeb has done a lot of these. I mean, we've talked about Spider-Man Blue. He did that with Tim Sale. He did a lot of collaborations with Tim Sale, and I would say a lot of those, the art was the driving force. Not that the writing wasn't good, but I would say it's more memorable for what it looked like than how it read. And I would say that's probably still true of Superman Batman. It doesn't always make sense, and it also feels like such a time warp because we're so far removed from this version of the DC universe that it's and some of the costumes and like it's just so different.
Amanda Waller.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very different Amanda Waller at the time.
Yeah.
It's interesting, and I'd have to check the chronology. I forgot to look it up. There were some beats in the Justice League animated cartoon when it was Justice League Unlimited that were very similar to here, because you had moments where Luthor was trying to be president, which was definitely something that had already happened in the comics. Some of his confrontations with Superman, because one of the evil versions of Superman on the cartoon did have a confrontation with Luthor in the Oval Office and did lobotomize him. So I can't remember which one came first and which one informed the other, but I got real animated series vibes when I was reading certain moments here. It's interesting too because it feels like Jeph Loeb throws in some stuff and then doesn't care about it anymore. Like the first issue is all about Metallo, and then Metallo just fucks right off. Like he doesn't care. Like he's just gone after that first issue. He doesn't care. He never comes back. And even the idea that maybe he was the guy who killed Batman's parents is kind of left and then briefly brought up in the 6th issue and then thrown away again. Like he just kind of throws things up and then moves on. And it was very apparent to me now, reading it all in a condensed way as opposed to reading it every month.
Right. And I was going to ask you about that particular beat, actually. First and foremost, this, like, reading through this, you know how it starts off, like, it is super accessible, right? So if I've never touched anything ever before, I can read this and go, hey, okay. Like, I know shit in general. I know, yes, Krypton blows up and he gets thrown into space. Yes, we got Martha and Pearls. Done. Okay, we check off all the key things that happen. And I do really like how you have like the thought bubbles of their points of view all the way through the 6 issues. I really enjoyed that piece of narration and that choice of them always kind of respecting each other. I know Bruce, he knows this. Oh, I know Clark, and this, like, all that kind of back and forth banter that they don't actually say out loud to each other, but in their heads about each other, I thought was really, really cool. But this whole Metallo thing, is that legit? Like, we, to this point in 2003, had no idea who killed the Waynes? Or is this a weird kind of retconny thing that they kind of sprinkled in this book to kind of...
Yes and yes. Basically, there had been Joe Chill before. I believe after the first major Crisis on Infinite Earths, I think after that they had resolved that he never solved it, that we didn't know. Now, in current continuity, he knows it's Joe Chill again. So I think that was kind of rectified eventually by one of the timey-wimey, reality-altering shenanigans that happened. But it is interesting,
Metallo has been cleared of all charges, is what you're telling me.
100%. It was such a weird move to even try and connect him to that. Like, it just felt very, like, okay. Like, I don't think anyone picking this up would have legitimately thought, oh, shit, it was Metallo who killed his parents?
You're right.
Like, I'm sorry, that doesn't...
He's a Superman villain, right? That's his Rose Gallery, right? Yeah, okay.
And even then, I don't remember the version of him here who can, like, morph into shit. Like... morph his arm into like a plow to like get them.
This was an action figure, I believe. They designed based on this.
Oh, really? Well, I'm not surprised. I think so. But the classic version of Metallo is more just with the metal kind of chassis and opening up the heart, and like that's usually how it works. To your point, I do love the internal thought boxes because that's something you don't see as much in comics anymore. And as you said, we're
saying everything out loud now.
Yeah, which is not as much fun. It's interesting, actually. I think about this often. At some point a few months ago, I showed Zach the first couple episodes of the Flash TV show, and he liked it. But one thing that it really reminded me of, and I hadn't watched it in a while, was that because when you're reading comics,
I'm sorry, we're talking like CW Flash.
Yeah, CW Flash. Yeah.
Okay.
When you're reading comics, people can like Barry is more interesting in the comics because he's thinking things. But you can't do that in a show, so he has to talk to someone, which meant the whole idea of like the man in the chair, which basically means your hero is kind of less useful on his own. Like he needs a team of other people helping him, and it's fine when it's a TV show, but when you're like, well, that kind of makes Barry less special. Kind of makes him less smart. He's not coming up with all this shit on his own. So that's what I like about narrative boxes, which we don't see anymore. And again, the brilliant juxtaposition of how Superman thinks something, and either Bruce will confirm it or be like, oh man, this is totally, I love that, because it's almost banter without banter. Like it's,
yes,
you know what I mean? It's like these bros having a great relationship, but like, in their minds, and it's fun. And as you said, it makes it more accessible, because there's so much here that is like weird, dense DC 2003 shit, but you almost don't care because it's breezy. It's you get enough to go on, and you just kind of go with it. You don't care that you don't know who this kid toy man is that they keep talking about. We got to go see the kid. We're going to distract him with Power Girl's boobs. Like, all right, cool, whatever. Like, it's so weirdly dense, but in a way that I didn't find was obtrusive to understanding the story.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that particular story beat. And, okay, have they used it more than once? Because I distinctly remember, I don't know if it's missing in the trade or whatever, but there is a conversation of the two of them talking about distracting a young person with Power Girl.
Okay.
And they're both looking at each other, giving themselves a wry smile as to why they would get Power Girl, right? Oh, yes, we know why. And I remember the next shot being pretty much a close-up of the cleavage. So, I don't know if they changed that in the trade, or I'm misremembering in my youth, or it was a different storyline and different artist, but I could have swore it was in this. And they were up in the mountains in the snow, and all the same situation.
So I'm curious, because I read this, so in preparation, I had given you my copy of a trade that collected this in the second arc of Superman Batman.
Yeah.
So I have been reading it digitally to prepare. And I believe that there is a moment here. But it wasn't like a super close-up. It's just a shot of Power Girl kind of shyly being like, how am I supposed to distract O?
Yeah, and she goes, oh, yes.
So you're thinking of a more gratuitous moment than that.
Well, not so much the gratuitous part, because more so like both Bruce and Clark kind of giving each other you know what I'm talking about, right? Like, they're both, yeah, okay. It's the boys, right?
I mean, I'm sure it's happened because it's puerile and it makes sense. So
yeah,
I'm sure it has occurred.
Okay. Yeah, could have swore it was here, but yeah. Anyways.
Now, how did you... Again, it's interesting to go back to this. Like, Luthor is president. This is the arc that undid that. So, like, this arc, in a lot of ways, did a lot of heavy lifting and really set the table for future things. But at the same time, was just kind of fun. I was struck by... I think part of what makes it as enjoyable is that it almost doesn't stay too long at the party. I like Hush, but it's 12 issues. It's a long, long thing. This is a lot more compact. And you get a lot of fun beats, and like you get to see the family. Like, what did you think about seeing Cyrell, who was, I guess, the Supergirl of the time, or Superwoman? I forgot what she was going by, but
S-Girl?
Yeah, S-Girl, for lack of a better term.
Is that what Connor calls her when they go barreling into the White House? I like even like looking at the cover of like the supporting cast, let's call it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this version of Steel, I like, who the hell was that? And behind Cassie Kane Batgirl, you have like this gold Herbie wannabe, and the girl in the silver cape and the thing, yeah.
So,
on your tail, S-Girl, like,
yeah.
How long did she last? Like,
well, not a long time. I think she was around maybe a couple years. So her name was Cyrell, Cir-El. According to Wikipedia, she was a human girl who was genetically altered by the villain Brainiac to appear Kryptonian. Now, originally, she thought that she was Superman's daughter. Turned out it was a ruse, because of course it is. But that was originally kind of the role that she played at the time. They have to remember, there was no active Supergirl at this point. There had been a Supergirl, Linda Danvers, who was retired in a series by Peter David because they knew that they were going to bring back a real or more familiar version of Supergirl. Because at the end of the day, Dan DiDio said, when you ask someone on the street who is Supergirl, they say, it's Superman's cousin, isn't it? Not a weird angel figure bonded to a human being. Like, at the end of the day, it's kind of like the Ben Reilly of it all. At the end of the day, you ask someone who Spider-Man is, they're never going to say Ben Reilly, they're going to say Peter Parker. And so they were kind of at that impasse, so they decided, let's bring back a real Kara Zor-El. We haven't had a real one, since, Crisis. So it'd been almost 20 years. So the idea was, we're finally going to bring back the real Supergirl.
Cool.
You're like, I don't care. Steel here was, she was used in and around this time. So that's Natasha Irons. So that's John Henry Irons' daughter. Or is it his daughter or his niece? No, I'm not sure.
I don't know. You're more the DC aficionado than I am, so my guess is daughter, but
yeah. So she's definitely, at the very least. So she is, she's an Irons. So that's her kind of background there. So she was used in and around this time. I remember they put her in Hero Clicks and all sorts of stuff. So she was in a fair bit of stuff at the time. She's still around, unlike Sorel, who really, I think, if I actually checked the issues, was probably gone within a few months, because issue 7 we see the introduction of the proper Supergirl.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Which is a whole other.
Which the next arc.
Yeah, which is a whole
conversation.
It's interesting because I find this is a pleasurable experience to go back to, because I find the art very enjoyable, but also not gratuitous. And that's the problem when you get to like Michael Turner on the next arc, is that it feels very of the time, and like I'd be uncomfortable handing it to my son, because I'd be like, it's very sexualized. In a way that doesn't always need to be. Well, actually, most of the time doesn't need to be. Whereas the first arc, I'd be like, this is bombastic and fun. It's what McGuinness does. So McGuinness does big, fun, bold figure work, and that's all on display. Again, I would say that's probably more the reason to read this. Again, at the time, this was really exciting for a lot of people, because Lex Luthor had been a businessman. He'd been a politician for the 20 years, or not 20 years, probably 15 years prior to this. He hadn't been an actual supervillain the way we were used to. Well, he was pre-Crisis. So here he gets to put on the fucking green body armor, and now it's powered by apocalyptic tech. So I'm curious what you thought of Luthor's portrayal, both as president and then as, Venom / synthetic kryptonite hopped up drug-addled maniac.
It all tracks for a character like Luthor at the end of the day. Slightly interesting to read in today's political climate. Reading this now, for sure. But yeah, like, this very much feels like what Luthor does. Obviously, like, I think this suit is pulled from the animated series. I think it originally originated from that, right? So
I know,
for him to kind of
this is Silver Age. He'd worn this before.
Oh, really? Okay, cool.
This is very classic battle armor.
Yeah, so it's a suit I'm accustomed to him kind of, hopping in and going full, I wasn't entirely sure. I guess it was a mix of venom and kryptonite was the drug he was hopped up on here. It's become a little more uber, explains why he beat the crap out of, the Bat family. So, plus the nerve gas, I guess, that he was pumping in through the office there. But cool for Nightwing to hold his own and still not fall until absolutely necessary. So, good on Dick there for sure.
I did love in that issue with the kids where, Robin's like, well, how many did you take down? And Huntress is like not having any of it. And Batgirl's like, I took out this many. He's like, really? Like, that's awesome. Like, what I liked about that is that even though Jeph Loeb is playing with like it being dire stakes, there is still fun. There's still some humor. There's some moments here. There's, I even love the idea of the castling, the idea like, let's switch who we're fighting, and that they would have certain code names or code words with each other. Like, they really emphasize that they're good friends and that they work together. And at the time, maybe that wasn't the most obvious thing to lean into, because again, after Dark Knight Returns in the mid-'80s, everyone kind of wrote Batman to be really distrusting of others. Not all the time, but it was definitely in his DNA that he was kind of an asshole, and definitely didn't always trust Batman. Superman. But this was very much like, these guys are buddies, and they trust each other, and to the ends of the earth, they'll go with each other, and you really felt it. And I really appreciated that, it was a good bonding relationship, and nice to see.
It really was. I can't find the pure line, but there's even one thing where, like, Clark mentions something like he respects Batman about one thing, but doesn't for another, right? So he has like the two sides of that coin, and I think Bruce Wayne like, like, damn, he's such a Boy Scout. But yeah, but if he ever realized how godly he could be, then you have injustice. right?
Yeah,
Essentially.
now you do, yeah.
Yeah.
I do like that moment
Right.
where he's like, I think of Clark as just a guy, and then he's a literal god raining fire down on people. Like, that's pretty fucking crazy, to be honest. Like,
it was, right? Yeah, here's all the ice guys, right? Let's find all the ice guys and throw them together. Like, these soups. Oh, yeah. To your left. Zap, zap, zap. Like, holy crap.
I did love that because it was very deliberate. Like, okay, right over here, just a little bit to the left. Like, like that's what these guys would be like working together. One thing that struck me more this time than any previous rereading, and I'm curious what you think about this, is that in a lot of ways, the real hero of the story is Captain Atom. Like, really, he's the one who saves the day. And in a lot of ways, he's the most agency. Like, it's not Superman and Batman who save the day. It's future Superman who's sad and Captain Atom. Because without those two, none of this works. But it's a Superman-Batman book, and they don't really get to be the ones who are the heroes, which I think is so fascinating, because it's not what you would expect from a book called Superman-Batman. You don't expect the surprise hero to be Captain Atom, which is, just an interesting swerve to take.
Yeah, he's a character that I only ever knew thanks to, like, Overpower, right? He was a character card. Oh, this guy's kind of interesting. What's he all about? So I guess, this military dude, infused with atomic power. Cool. I guess maybe a similar skill set to Major Force. Although I had to kind of laugh through the narration when they announced this group of heroes. But Major Force is there, and they say heroes all. No, that dude's stuffed somewhere in the fridge. I don't want to classify Major Force as a hero ever. Like, I'm sorry, did I miss something where he turned a leaf to be good? Is he like a Sandman, type of situation at times, where he goes back and forth? Like,
no, he's awful.
Fridge.
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
So it's interesting. Captain Atom, when he dies here, stopping the meteor, he's actually transported to the Wildstorm universe, and doesn't come back for a while until Infinite Crisis, because there's another character who is around at this period of time. I forget exactly when he's introduced. Actually, but it would have been a couple years later, named Breach. And that character is it has similar power set to Captain Atom. He gets broken by Superboy Prime. It like punctures the guy, and then he disrupts, and then I think Captain Atom just shows up in his place or something like that. So they eventually bring him back. But yeah, he just gets shunted to another reality. They don't mention it here. It's not really important. Again, it's such a weird choice to kind of like let this guy have a noble sacrifice, but it's not really what we think it is. But they don't address it in the confines of the story. Because it doesn't matter, right? Like, now, what did you think of the composite Superman robot?
I would love to know what the script notes to McGuinness were to design that thing. Like, I don't know what kind of function that needs to serve other than the pomp and circumstance of this story.
It's completely ridiculous, but like it's a lot of fun, right? Like but it's just so silly.
Yes. It is quite ridiculous. But hey, it served a purpose to blow up a meteor. I don't know.
It's interesting, again, reading it all in context. Like, I like the idea that they seed this idea of something coming from Krypton, and then, in the next arc, we get Supergirl, but she was, traveling in that meteorite. Which, again, so I like that it's kind of building on each other. This version of Superman, the future Superman as well, he continues to be showing up throughout Superman Batman as well. So it's interesting that this is very much kind of a done in one arc, but there are elements that do carry forward, but not in such a way that you're like on the edge of your seat wondering what happens to them.
Yeah, even the last page, like, they'll be reckoning a crisis, right? And that tees up Infinite, I believe. So it's interesting. That's kind of very much, been a throwaway just for funsies story, but the fact that they still had lingering effects from it, kudos to them to keep the flame alive for certain things. So that is definitely very cool. Because, this easily could have been like a simple one-shot story, completely meaningless for anything else, no connection to the greater DC universe necessarily. But I think this book was designed to push sales and get people to buy in and stuff like that. So and kickstart maybe some interest into the DC universe. And like I said, I enjoyed reading at the time. It was this was probably for me DC's really one of their best periods, like in this kind of window of between Identity and Infinite Crisis. Like, there's a lot of good stuff here. I did enjoy at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is not long before Identity Crisis started. And actually, I'm trying to think, because this came out late 2003. Identity Crisis was, I think, summer 2004, so like it's leading up to it. I remember leading up to Infinite Crisis, which was 2005. So many articles about all the hints and all the little things that had been seeded. And obviously this was always one that people kind of looked at, was that you do see Luthor say that there's a crisis coming. Now, I'd have to check the exact chronology for Luthor, but I think the next time we see him, leading the not the Cabal, that's the Marvel version, the Society, which we later learned isn't him. It's the Alexander Luthor from Earth 3, who survived the original Crisis, and instead the Luthor that we get at the end of this, who eventually, when it comes down from his drugs, is out there trying to plot against this version who's taking over him. But he's in the battle suit, so that continues to be a recurring element. So yeah, I would agree with you. This is kind of one of my favorite periods of DC. It starts to be very interconnected in a way that Marvel used to do really well. And so things start to feel like they really matter. And it builds up to, I still love Infinite Crisis. There may be some problems here and there, but for the most part, I love the build up to it and feeling like something important was about to happen, because you have little pieces. Like when little pieces start to connect, you're like, wait, what about this? What about this? Like there's something really exciting to that. Which I would say actually DC in a lot of ways is more like that now. I feel like Marvel feels more and more siloed and feels less like interconnected as a company.
Current state, I'd agree with that, yeah.
And I'm probably less excited in a lot of Marvel's output, but DC, with its All-In initiative, is actually trying to build hype back up and really put things together. Plus, they have Absolute, which is killing it in certain terms of sales as well, because people just want to see radicalized versions of characters they know.
Yeah, well, Ultimate Universe worked for Marvel once and kind of working again right now to a certain degree. So yeah, Absolute being DC's version of it. It's a nice palate cleanser. It's a nice fresh take on a lot of the characters, and yeah, as long as they keep going in the right direction with it, then yeah, it'll. I think everyone will always go back to the original 616 or Prime Universe, whatever DC's is, all the time. At the end of the day, they'll still be king. But yeah, those are always, when done well. I always love a good what if story, right? And those are what ifs done on a whole different level when you have the whole universe to build off and focus on, and then they'll ultimatum it and ruin the whole thing, and we move on and try again later.
So a question I have for you is that what do you think of the logo for this book? Like, I think it's such a fun piece of design with the S shield,
it's great.
And then the bat, and it's like
in the bat.
In the bat,
okay.
Like they used a version of it. They co-opted it for the not so great BVS movie when they were first kind of showing, we're going to bring these characters together. They kind of used that same style of logo design. I don't know if this is the first time they'd ever used it like this, but I remember seeing it on the shelves and being like, holy shit! Like that's just a really cool, elegant design. Like very simple, but it works.
Yeah, 100%. You could have thrown that on the cover by itself, and that would have just, there you go.
That's true. Actually, they probably could have done that.
Yeah.
I did like the idea here, and this plays into the end of No Man's Land, where you have Superman really got Luthor by the throat, right? And Batman's not going to talk him down. He's not going to tell him not to do it. And he even says he almost did it to the Joker, and it was Jim who told him not to. He's like, I'm not Jim Gordon, and I'm like, holy shit! That's harrowing. That's at the end of the day, he's not. He's a lot of things, but he's not the guy who can talk someone down, but he believes in who Clark is at the same time. Which, again, feels very accurate to these people, because it wouldn't feel right to have Batman just being like, oh, we don't do this. No, he's been on the edge himself. And it would feel disingenuous. It would make sense if Superman was, talking down Batman, but not really the other way around. So I like that it had, again, taking advantage of the internal dialogue with himself to be like, this is what's happening. And I think, again, as a reader, you get so much more from that because you get a really good perspective, especially when they're ping-ponging off each other.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I can't agree more. It was, no one's broke character, per se. Everyone, felt very genuine in terms of how it read. Obviously, I think I would argue they went a little over the top with the I know they were all being controlled by Gorilla Grodd, but the siege of supervillains that are fighting on the White House lawn at one point is like, really? Like, you're the world's finest for sure, 100%. But even if they're being mind controlled and not quite at their best, you are heavily outnumbered here.
Yeah.
To defeat all these supervillains at the same time. But it makes for a good mega splash page of it all for McGuinness to draw. So I guess that's kind of a fun part. And I really like some of the art when, like, all you see is Batman's glowing eyes and some of the poses and the flips that does. So, like, Batman, you know, it seems to be all, like, regardless of the light situation, Batman's always shrouded in darkness, but Superman's always, you know, big and bright, you know?
Yep.
You know, it's like, it's a great kind of balance. It's probably intentional on their part.
Absolutely.
To go through it all.
With the big moment where you have Hawkman and Captain Marvel, but it turns out it's not them. It's Batman and Superman in disguise. That's, again, one of the things I love about comics that you can't really do anywhere else is that, you know, you can't actually hear them. So there's a lot that they can, you know, kind of obfuscate from us. Like, it always reminds me of, remember when the new Avengers got together and you had, like, someone talking off panel and it ends up being, like, Spider-Woman or I guess the Skrull Spider-Woman, actually. But because you can't hear that voice and you just see the voice, it opens up so many more ideas and, like, avenues they can go, and has you play more in your head about, like, oh, who is that? But we don't have something obviously telling you what it is. So I feel that way about, you know, Luthor could probably tell what Superman sounds like. Maybe not, because he also sees Clark all the time and doesn't think anything of it. But in theory, but there's something extra special because you can't hear them, and so it adds more to the mystery of it, and that they were able to get away with it. It's a great moment. Like, it's really fun. I don't know how much sense it makes that, like, oh, they were distracted for a moment, and so we took them out. And I'm like, all right, you did it off panel. That's cool. But it gives you a cool moment. And again, I like the fight between those, you know, that pairing. Although it's interesting, after reading Kingdom Come, I don't think anything really parallels or, like, lives up to how Shazam fights against Superman there, but just screaming Shazam and then moving out of the way and letting the lightning hit Superman constantly, because that's mystical lightning. It hurts. But yeah, I really enjoyed them fighting, and yeah, it was just, I would say I would have thought that Captain Marvel would have sounded a little bit more kid-like, but, like, he's not a kid. I mean, that's what Shazam movies did, but that's never really been the character. But I don't know. Right. He didn't quite feel exactly correct, but Hawkman felt right. So
yeah, probably wasn't Hawkman. But I don't know where Bruce was hiding his costume, because he enters the Oval Office as Batman shortly after. So I don't know what Hawkman's pouch is. He had his bat suit. That's what Jake did too pretty quick. I
mean, you don't think at some point he said, "Hey Barry, do you think I could put a bat costume in a ring?" Like, the tech, tech exists. I mean, it's nonsensical, but it exists.
He is quite genius, for sure.
So, a question that I asked Nate on a segment that we did for episode 1100, which is actually 2 episodes after this one, but I'll ask you, is what? When did you first come to Superman? Like, or like, what's the first version of Superman that you think of, or like that you first kind of saw? Like, was it movies? Was it cartoons first? Was it a comic? Was it a specific comic? Like, when did you first learn of Superman?
It's probably... Oh, man, loaded question. Good question.
He just existed.
Yeah. Some combination of either the Christopher Reeve movies, or, like, for DC stuff in general, those original action figures you could squeeze their legs and their arms with. Punch.
Oh, yeah.
So I remember, the Batman, the Batmobile, and then, seeing the various DC characters from that when I was a kid. So, yeah, I can't remember what came first, but, yeah, my initial understanding of discovering Superman would have been through one of those mediums, yeah.
Okay.
And then the first Superman comic, it might even be this. I don't even know.
That late?
It might be. Right? Because, remember, I never cared about DC, right? It was never my book of choice. I would have read, Batman or other stuff before, and, like, Superman would be in stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but like a book he would like headline.
Really interesting. So, like,
Because
when you're 13 years old,
after
Superman.
Hush,
Yeah.
there was then Lee did the Man of Tomorrow, whatever. Like
For Tomorrow, which I think is after
Tomorrow.
this.
It is after, yeah. So I remember that. Yeah.
Interesting. So you're 13 years old. Superman dies. Nothing. You're not intrigued by Reign of the Supermen. All this kind of crazy shit happening.
This is basically all the Marvel shenanigans happening at the time. There was no again, knew of it. People I think people threw at me some of the books afterwards. Yeah, so I guess I did know about Eradicator, Cyborg Superman, that kind of stuff.
But was it later, or was it at the time?
More like glancing through it, not really reading and like actively searching it out. Like people said, "Here, check this out. Superman's died." Like, oh, okay, yeah.
So, in terms of super media, 1988, there's a 3 seasons of a Superboy show. Did you ever watch that as a kid?
No.
Okay.
Didn't know it existed.
Okay. 1994, you have Dean Cain becomes Superman and Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, which I think was 4 or 5 seasons. Ever watch that?
That's classic. Yeah, I watched my fair share. Maybe first couple of seasons at best, but yeah.
Okay. We have the Superman animated series, which is part of the Tim Dini-verse. That would have been mid to late 90s.
Yeah, a few episodes. Obviously, Batman was always king, and then parlay that into like Justice League and see Limited would probably be the more deeper dive of that type of stuff.
Okay, and did you ever watch Smallville, any of that stuff?
Some Smallville, yeah, Tom Welling was good, right? But like he was always Superman light, right? He was always a civilian, never quite like the costume you barely got at the very end. Like it was, it was cute. And you had, obviously Green Arrow and a few other people sprinkled in throughout. I did watch some Smallville, yes.
Okay. Now, having read, obviously, like after Superman Batman, you did end up reading Superman. Is Superman a character that you periodically come to, or are you, generally speaking, like, you like him just fine, but you're not really interested in his solo adventures? You're more interested in him as a side character, or as part of a team book, or as part of a team up? Like, where does Superman kind of fit for you?
Yeah, I wouldn't say by any means I'm a Superman guy, right? I would go to, like, many other DC properties I've landed on Superman for sure. If he's the centerpiece to a big event story, or something like this, then that's cool for me at the end of the day. Like, I'm more and more less worried if there's a good story arc, if there was a great arc that Jason Aaron wrote in Action Comics, for example, or whatever. Yeah, okay, I'll go check that out for sure, because my comic knowledge and tastes have matured over over time for sure. So yeah, I'd be interested. I would check certain things out if I knew they were worth taking a look at. But otherwise, if Superman's involved with whatever shenanigans is happening in the greater DCU, then I'm fine with that.
Okay. It's interesting. Jason Aaron did write a very good Superman arc about a year or two ago. So I think it was in Action Comics. So I might have a book for you to read.
Well, I pulled a toy on my butt, but okay, that's great.
That's very interesting. Yeah, so it's just never been your guy.
No.
So I'm curious, when it comes to, obviously you watch the Superman movies, do you feel differently about watching Superman in a movie as opposed to reading his adventures on the page?
I don't know.
That was the longest pause I think you've given.
Yeah. the Reeve movies were cute, right? And very much of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, do we go to Superman Returns? Is that what's next? The Brandon Roth movie?
Movie-wise? Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, because that was terrible. And then Man of Steel. Cavill was a great Superman. I didn't mind him at all. He just lived in a very dark universe with Snyder there. And then, and we'll see what this new one has in store. I think I'm excited for it, to be honest. I think I'm hopeful that this will give a fresh start for DC. I hope it will do well. Like, I I know I'm not a big DC fan, but I'm not a DC hater either, right? If they make good content, I will read it. I will enjoy it. Like, I'm not here to bash it. I've just always tended to go back to Marvel because I enjoy their characters and their content more. But as Marvel has kind of gone up and down very recently, too, if DC has a breath of fresh air and something fun, I'm also super excited to see... I'm a big fan of Nathan Fillion, so his take on Guy Gardner. I really wish it was Hal Jordan, but let's see him with the bowl cut do his thing. I hope he has more than just a couple of one-off, mini scenes. I know that Justice Society is kind of there. I don't want to overcomplicate it with a ton of characters, but I hope that's some fun interactions with Mr. Fillion there. But yeah, I think this movie, from what I've seen, it seems to have a good mix of the human side and the Boy Scout side, and then there's always some good action and big things from the punch. Mm-hmm. That's always the hard thing for Superman. He's a so OP, overpowered character, right? And how do you balance that? Obviously, brains versus brawn, the classic Luthor Superman dynamic, which is great, but we've also been there 1,000 times. Like, we've seen the X-Men fight Magneto 1,000 times in the movies. We're over that, right? So we'll see how this Luthor, and I hated the Luthor in the Snyderverse. It was not a fan of Grandma's piss pot in the chair there. But so we'll see what this has in store, and I hope it does well. And it's a good movie, and we'll see what it leads to in terms of maybe future stories and comics that may be of interest. And if there's a Jason Aaron thing to read, then I'll read a Jason Aaron thing. That's a great time.
It's interesting hearing you talk about the Green Lantern of it all. Like, I'm very curious to see what Guy Gardner is like on film, and hopefully it looks like he's going to feel like Guy Gardner. I'm not totally sold on the shade of green that they seem to be using in terms of the vibrancy.
Very neon.
Yeah, I'm not really sure about that. There is a Lanterns TV series that they're working on, that Tom King was working on. Kyle Chandler, who's actually older than Nathan Fillion. I think he's turning 60 this year, so that's an old...
Yeah, I saw a picture like this. Old guys, Hal Jordan, you couldn't give Nate that role? What are you doing?
I think he can actually pull off a pretty good Hal, but yeah, he doesn't feel like you're going to get 20 years of him either. Like,
I know, right?
And there has to be a thought of some of that. And actually, that brings us back to Superman Batman, because, Jon Stewart's here is practically a non-entity. Like, he doesn't really do anything...
I went combing through, and I said, did he even say anything? Like, was he just totally a background character? And I found a line at one point where Superman asked him, hey, make a containment field. Okay, Superman, I'm on it. That's it. Like,
right?
Complete, like, why are you here?
Like, it was... And again, I would have to check the exact kind of months, because I'm like, was Kyle now off-planet? And it was before Rebirth. Like, we didn't have that yet, so we don't have... Hal actually back for a little while, so I guess it's just Kyle's in space, I guess, and at this point, and in For Tomorrow, which is a few months after this, John was the de facto Justice League Green Lantern. But
he's a military guy, so to be associated with the president makes sense as well.
Yeah, well, actually, it's interesting because the military thing came more from the cartoons, at least from what I know. He was always an architect, and then they added in more of this military background, and now he's both an architect and a military guy, which is fine. He could be many things. But yeah, I just rereading it again, I'm like, I don't think Green Lantern needed to be here. It could be literally any character with the ability to put a force field on something. It could be Invisible Woman, and it would have been fine. Like, it just was so non-entity, and it's Green Lantern. You'd think it'd be like really cool and be able to do a lot of stuff, and yet John does nothing. Didn't need to be there.
Starfire in here was odd too.
Yeah,
she's a Titan. Why is she here? This makes no sense to be on this team.
No, and it's interesting because some of the comments about her, like, obviously, like, Dick would vouch for her. Like, you don't trust Starfire. Yeah. Like, have you ever talked to Dick Grayson? Like, he tried to marry the girl. Like, I think he trusts her more than anyone. Like.
And she's an alien, and who hates aliens? Lex Luthor. Like, what? That makes no sense, right?
That's true. Well, he only hates certain aliens.
Okay, Lex.
Maybe, and actually, that's interesting. And I don't remember how he was there, why he was there, or why he was ever on Earth. But Mongol being like mindless and just kind of punching on Superman was one of those things where I feel like he was like, "Hey, Ed, who you want to draw?" He's like, "I love Mongol." Yeah. He's like, "All right, cool." I don't know how he's here or what he's going to do, but. Is he going to have the Black Mercy? No, he's just going to punch Superman, and then that's it. Like,
it's over, yeah.
Even Grodd didn't really get much to do.
No, he was like hiding on the top of the tower there, and boop, punch him in the face, done. And everyone passes out as a result.
Yeah.
Like a battle great defeat. But this montage of like Superman flying up and beating a bunch of the heroes, and then Batman on the ground doing his thing and taking out like the heroes per se.
Yeah.
Wicked splash. Like what a great page of original art that would be for someone to kind of have that whole sequence, like flying up and like using all his powers. I'm gonna like punch Power Girl in the face. I'm gonna heat beam Captain Atom. I'm gonna freeze Green Lantern, and basically take a blast to the face from Starfire that won't phase me because I'm Superman. So yeah, it's a really cool kind of sequence of events that like really showcases how like badass and Batman. Okay, I'm gonna tie you up, Black Lightning. I'm gonna acid face you, Major Fourth, and karate kick you in the face. Katana done. Like boom, boom, boom.
Yeah,
can't touch this. Cool.
Art wise, like again, we're talking a lot about Ed McGuinness, but really you have to give a lot of credit to some fantastic coloring work as well, because the colors in this book are fantastic and really sell it. Because if you had a kind of more tepid or even more like classic colorist who wasn't really leaning into the digital tools of the time, you would not have as good a look, but good as looking a book. So the colors are by Dave Stewart, and I believe inks are by Dexter Vines. So they really bring a lot to the work. And again, there's this great dichotomy between, as you said, like when Batman's there, it's dark. And when Superman's there, it's bright. They're in the same sequence, and yet somehow they're lit differently. But that's just, it's iconic. It's an iconic look for each character. Some of the
glowing eyes, like when Batman's doing a flip his face and his eyes are glowing. When Superman's angry, is the heat vision, or even Crypto, the quick thing of Crypto, and you see his eyes when he breaks into the Oval Office there. Like, I love the glow, like the newspaper thing, the Cyclops, the optic flare, right? So good.
Now, I'm not sure which, if all the covers are in the trade that you have, but I think there was like 4 different variant covers for this. I think that Ed McGuinness did them all, but they're all gorgeous. Which cover was in the collection that you have? And does it have the trade dress or just the naked art?
I don't know. They have these split pages.
Oh.
That happen through.
So that's not even the real cover.
Proper covers, no.
Okay,
but
well.
It's really cool shot. Like, this opening shot's really cool. Batman like coming down with glowing eyes and that's really a nice cover.
So that's one of the covers to issue number 1.
Yeah. But otherwise, everything else says Superman, Batman down the middle, and it's a split of like Superman something on the left and Batman something on the right, or vice versa.
Okay,
is what you have, like dividing the chapters essentially. Yeah.
There's one cover that it feels like Zack Snyder saw it and took it to the wrong direction, because it's a cover where Superman's on it. His upper body is in shadow, but the bottom of him is not. He's holding like a mugger in one hand. His eyes are just glowing red, like he's evil somehow. And he's standing next to Batman, who's like crouched on something, and he's got just the white eyes. And I'm like, I think Zack Snyder saw this and decided, you know what? Superman's kind of evil, isn't he?
Maybe.
But like, at the end of the day, this felt very, in the nicest way possible, very primary colors Superman, Batman. Like, they are heroes. There's no gray. Yes. They're just heroes. And even when Superman's really mad at Luthor, no one really thinks he's really going to do it because he's still a hero. And there's something really reassuring sometimes about reading story. Like, there's so many stories out there with anti-heroes or heroes like the Punisher, and you're like, well, they're almost just as bad as they are good. And in this one, they're just like, these are the good guys. They're going to do good things, and the bad guy is going to do bad things. And it kind of is not any more complicated than that.
100%.
And there's a time and a place for that, and maybe it's just the world we live in now. It's kind of nice to just have, white hats and not white hats. I don't want to say black hats. That sounds wrong, but
yes.
but there's just something really nice about hero and villain, and often in the world we just don't have that distinction anymore, especially when you look at who the leaders are these days. So it's really not as black and white. So being able to look at it here and just have heroes and villains going at it is really fun.
Yeah, that's good. And I like that they didn't try and shoehorn Wonder Woman in here. Right?
Yeah.
I know we see her in the next thing, but this arc didn't need her, and I'm glad they didn't try and force her in any weird way. And I respect that.
I think it mentions that she's keeping the Justice League kind of out of this, which is again, that is kind of the thing, right? Because at the end of the day, these are the two most famous superheroes on the planet. There's $1 billion bounty on them, and we don't really get check-ins from Flash and Wonder Woman and others. And I kind of like that because you don't need that. Like, you get a lot of heroes that are being brought into this naturally. So it doesn't need to be, again, it doesn't need to be overly complicated. I feel like you could give this to a lot of people and they could pick it up. There's, again, some weird stuff, but for the most part, it gives you what you need and it moves on.
It does. Exactly. It totally does. Yeah.
So, anyways, well, I'm glad that you read it. Now, do you remember what your homework is for next month?
No.
So it is Fantastic Four, 48, 49, and 50, and 51 if you're nasty. That's just for fun. But really only what you need is 48 to 50. It's the original Galactus saga by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. And I'll tell you up front, I will forgive if you don't read the first, 10 pages of 48, because it has nothing to do with anything. It's ending the previous arc. It has nothing to do with the actual story that you're there for. The story that's literally on the cover, it doesn't start till halfway through.
Are you lending me an epic for this to read, or what's happening with the content?
I just found out I'm seeing you in 3 days, so I think I'm pushing an epic into your hands, yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I don't think you would have this otherwise.
No, okay, awesome.
But that'll be the next Book of the Month Club that we'll record sometime in July, before Fantastic Four First Steps comes out. And it'll come out probably that weekend as well. So, well, thanks for going back down memory lane again. We thought we had something that you hadn't read before, but this, in some ways, is more fun finding out that this is maybe the first real Superman comic you ever read. So this is actually a lot more interesting than I think Nate and I expected.
I'm glad to entertain.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to the Comic Shenanigans podcast. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, listen to us on Spotify, and also rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. You can email us at comicshenanigans@gmail.com. And I'm recording this early, so I don't actually know what future episodes are going to necessarily have in store. I know that we have the 1100th episode coming out soon. We have a creator spotlight episode where we talk about some of the works of Peter David, both from the beginning, middle, and end of his career, sadly, and many more things to come. So thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.